Hey everybody, this is Matt Jezik from Motif. I'm the head of product and welcome to the monthly webinar that we're doing. And this one's actually really special because we're going to be focusing a little bit less on like new product features. Number one, we do have a new release of the software coming out today. We're going to spend a little time on that, but we're going to talk a little bit more broadly about a workflow. So I'm joined today with my colleague Jens. So Jens, introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. Yeah. My name is Jens Kossel. I'm looking after industry and market development here at Motif. So,
Awesome.
yeah, happy to be here.
And Jens, obviously, we've worked together. We've known each other for a really long time, and Jens is coming directly from the industry, from Bjarke Engel's group. So appreciate that and taking the big leap, leaving architecture practice and coming into starting to build software. So appreciate that.
Yeah.
And obviously, he was one of the original pens and authors of a set of letters to Autodesk and other people before about how the industry needs to change. So we worked together for a really long time. So appreciate that. So today, what we're going to do is talk about one of the three workflows that Motif supports. So if you guys have tuned into previous monthly webcasts, we've gone over a few of them, or if you've seen some of the other videos or used the software so far, the original idea for Motif is we're building a platform, and that platform will extend into design and other things as we build it out. So it's all online, all real time, all collaborative, and makes sense to building a platform for this century for the new types of ways people want to design and the new types of people that are actually doing design work. And the first product that we're building is just called Motif, and it's mostly around design review. So how do we support the collaboration process between architects and engineers, number one, but even inside of a company, like how do people that are doing the work in something like Revit or Rhino start to communicate with other people that they work with, say the principal or project manager, like a senior person. And the state of the art today is pretty much like everybody exports PDFs and says, here, check it out. So gone are the days of a pin-up necessarily, like in an office and a design review or critique, necessarily a lot more digital online stuff, even inside of an office. So
Mm.
what we're doing in Motif is allowing people to do that digitally. You can do a, we have this infinite canvas kind of concept like we've seen before, and you can use that in kind of three different ways. So if I go to Motif on this right now, I have people typically do mood board kind of concept board things, or they do 3D design reviews that we've talked about before, or they do sheet reviews. So taking drawings that typically are exported from something like Revit as PDFs and using other applications that exist to review them or mark them up. You can also do that in this system. So the same markup and commenting capabilities work for 2D whiteboarding capabilities in 3D on the geometry and then also for sheet review. So for today, we're excited. We're talking a little bit more about the sheet review process because we haven't really talked about it that much. And I guess what I want to do right now is turn it over to Jens. And just because you came from industry relatively recently, like what is the state of the art? Like how did you guys practice? What was the normal way that people worked and then also communicated what they were working on and got feedback and then iterated?
Obviously, I've been in both very small practices way back in my early days of the career. I've also been at medium and large and very large firms. I've seen a lot of different workflows, things from like the good old fashioned, you print the entire drawing set out on paper, you mark it up with a traditional red pen, and I've seen people then scan in like A1s and A0s back in to get them digital again. But obviously, within the most of the recent years, it's been mostly traditional workflows like Bluebeam with shared sessions and so forth. That's what we used a lot at Big when I was still there. So I guess that's the sort of uh, maybe not standard way of doing it, but that's at least what a lot of practices are using these days.
So what does
But
that look
again,
like on a
it's
daily basis? Like who's doing what in that process?
that depends. I think it varies a lot from even within a company, even at a company like Big where I was before. It varies a lot from project to project as to how certain procedures are being driven or run. But so sometimes it's a little bit up to the project manager as to how they do the weekly quality checks, or the reviews, if you will. But I think that the very traditional one is that you first start by printing a PDF, and then you end up with a large amount of PDFs, and then someone binds those together, and then you either upload them to Bluebeam, or you upload them to Miro, or you upload them to. There's so many different platforms in a way that you can use for reviews. And I guess the main thing here is that you always end up having to first print and then make sure you get the right printout, and that alone can be a rather long process, if you will, because you have to make sure that your print settings are correct, and you have to review that they actually came out looking sharp, and that everything is within the frame. And I know some of that has gotten better over the years, and even printing out of Revit now is also way better than it was, let's say 5, 10 years ago. But it's still not straightforward, and there's still occasional hiccups and occasional things that along those lines can be somewhat annoying, if you will, or at least like something that ends up taking time, because at the end of the day, you end up having to print, you have to bind, you have to upload somewhere, and then you have to, once you've uploaded it, you either have to start a session or you have to send some invites out, and that whole process can take time. So I
So
think that's really
in
what
this case
excites me
here,
with the.
if we were working on this project in Revit, so forget about Motif for a second, just talk about we're working on this condo project together. This has a pretty decent set of drawings in it. If I wanted to send that out, I would send out like a check set using the sheet set functionality from Revit. There would be like our floor plans or the permit drawings or whatever, and I would need to export that, right? So I'd make a
Yeah,
PDF, and it would be a multi-page PDF that we're exporting, but that takes time, to your point, right? Clearly, there are ways to automate that in different platforms, but for a normal practice, a lot of the ones that we've been in, and even when we were working with you guys, it's Friday afternoon, time to export the PDFs. So that, and you can see right now, like my computer is like basically locked up. How do we get people to look at that from like an invisible work standpoint and say, why, why are we doing that? How can we do that
yeah.
better?
I think you're right. Definitely, some of the current tools are starting to have either plugins within Revit that can do certain automations around these things. And as I said, it has also gotten a lot better over the years. From at least, again, 5, 10 years back, it was a lot harder, or at least a lot more annoying sometimes to print and get stuff out into the correct format and size and stuff. And quite often you needed sort of external tools to help you do that. But anyhow, I think you're right that there is a lot of invincible work in doing the export, doing the print, bind it, upload it, and today we're going to talk about reviews, but we could also just as well be talking about like ease of sharing, how that is also something that could be dealt with later on. But at least there is a lot of time that architects and engineers, for that matter, and a lot of people in the AC industry are using on simply just exporting,
Mhm.
binding, sending off to someone, sharing, reviewing, and I guess that's a lot of the stuff that we are also trying to do
Exactly.
something about with Motif, and that's really also some of the stuff that excites me currently.
Awesome. So yeah, let's get into that. So I think again, one of the things I really like about what we're building in Motif is we're building a new platform, but it's not displacing something that exists. Like people are spending a lot of time in Revit and Rhino on a
Yeah,
daily basis. And what we have in Motif, if you guys aren't familiar, is a way to have an online platform that can give you 3D and 2D stuff together, but you're not changing where you're designing. Like that's happening in Revit. And then we have these little plugins that are just sitting there happily like listening and can like watch over your shoulder and then stream that information to the cloud and other people can get to it. So if I'm like the technical person like that's doing details and stuff like that, I'm slaving away in Revit, drawing stuff. And if you're the guy in the black turtleneck and a nice little scarf, if you're on a flight or moving around and you need to give some feedback, I can share something with you. You get an immediate update on that and you can mark it up and I get that feedback immediately too. So I think that's the key thing is we're not trying to change existing process, but we're trying to make it smoother. And
right.
we can go.
Also, maybe to add to that, like what we have seen in a lot of the customer meetings and calls and demos and whatnot that we've been doing over the last couple of months is that we are starting to see a lot more people using different infinite canvas tools to do their reviews of content, not only drawings, but also just images and other things. But we have seen quite a few practices that are using infinite canvas tools to do their review. But most of these tools, currently, you have to again do the export to PDF and then bring content into the infinite canvas. And then by the time you've done marking up, there's no sort of connection back, and you have to reiterate reinitiate a new upload, if you will, every time you have to update some of the content. And I think that's obviously the switch to the infinite canvas tools, I think is obviously where a lot of this stuff will go. But obviously, some of these tools are just not built for the AC industry. They're generalist tools where Motif is purpose built for the
Exactly.
AC industry.
Yeah, so let's go through that a little bit. So you can see while I'm here, I have a sheet set. So on the right-hand side, we have Revit, and this is one of our demo projects, but this is actually a real project from one of our colleagues that has built things in California. So this is an example construction document set, and there's plenty other ones that we can't show that are customer related. But the key thing that we're seeing here that is similar to what other applications can do or current processes, but also a little bit different, is I can publish the 3D model, which we'll show in a second, but I also have the drawings. So like I can export a full drawing set here, and you can just see like I was marking that up before, and we can add comments and we can collaborate back and forth. So let's get into that. All this stuff is going to be, this is currently existing in Motif, and people can use it today. If you guys are on this thing and you haven't experienced Motif before, definitely reach out. Happy to work with you. And we'll save a little time at the end to talk about some other things that I keep on bouncing back and forth in a little bit here. But let's start doing that. So if I go to our little environment here, go back to our projects, and I'm just going to go to our Motif example here. So we have a sheet review that's already set up that's similar to the one we just did. So I've published the 3D model and I've published some sheets, and those could be in a separate board or in the same board, but we can just go through that process live. So what we found people do so far is they create different boards for different reasons. That might be a mood board or might be some concept presentation or a 3D review. But we also found people do like actual design review sessions, like using the
Right.
board. And there's a couple different ways to do that. This is one that we really like. So first off, in Motif coming out today, one of the cool things that we've added is the ability to start a board with a top-down view. So if you have a project manager or someone that is super familiar with dealing with 3D stuff, but they're not necessarily as technical anymore, or they haven't really been in Revit or Rhino for a while, maybe they're not really super familiar with 3D modeling, even rotating or navigating in 3D, they can just start in 2D. So if I just start a board here and just say whatever, sheet review with ends, and this doesn't have to be super formal. This is not like a big QA, QC, VDC process, clash detection. It's just like, hey, we're just going to sit down. It's a Friday morning. We're going to talk about some stuff. So I'm just going to make a new view or a new board.
You almost think about it as almost just like laying out a couple of drawings on the table just for us to
Exactly.
sit and go through.
Yeah. And that's the cool thing about it. And I know I told you before, like we have this little plugin on in Revit. So I have Revit over here. This doesn't really matter what version, 23, 24, 25, 26, doesn't really matter. But what we're going to do right now is basically publish the model to that and into my new board. So you notice I'm connected to this project here, this condo building, and I can publish to either the original project or to a specific board. So let's just do that. So I'm going to say publish to this new board that I created. And I'm going to actually, for this case, I'm going to live stream it too. So first thing I'm going to do is just publish the 3D model. And this is nothing new. We've had this since the beginning in Motif. It's really one of the cool things that I just want to get back to is like giving people a web-based, browser-based experience that is pretty immediate. That was like what, maybe 15 seconds to like deploy like a
Mm.
full Revit model to the cloud, right? So this is all real time. As I change this model, this thing is basically watching over my shoulder, for example. If I move whatever, some context stuff around, you'll see it update here. So those little like micro transactions, it's all watching. Like basically anything that's like undoable in Revit, we're watching and will be kept up to date. So that's foundational to what we're doing. And then in addition to that, of course, we have the full model here. So you can think about this like a link or an XREF or whatever, this particular top level thing. But then underneath that, like we have all the other stuff. Like we've got the categories of the walls and windows and doors of this thing that are all there too. So you can dig into that. You can do a bunch of stuff in 3D. But what I wanted to do today is talk about the 2D stuff as well. So in addition to publishing or streaming the 3D model, I can also publish sheets. So similar to what we were talking about with PDF, if you have a sheet set in Revit, I can actually just send that out in the same way. But instead of sending it out to PDF and single page or multi-page and all that stuff, and then managing that, uploading it somewhere else. Do you have the right version or not? You don't have to worry about
Mm.
that. You can just do that here. So I can just, let me just do a couple of these like right now, and we can add a few more later. So let's just look up to like the axons, just to get the basic idea going. And if I save and close that, so that's a sheet set in Revit that if I go back to the thing, I can say, now I'm going to publish that as another type of asset to our model here.
And those will not be live.
Exactly. So the idea is like when you see the big button that says publish, that is like a like blah, go out and do that. That's like a once-off kind of thing. If you see the live streaming, that's where the other stuff is happening. And what we'll see is that those things will start coming in. So I have my 3D model here, and then in that immediate amount of time, like whatever it is, to less than a minute, we'll start to see those sheets show up here too. So there they are. And what we have here is literally all the sheets in that project. So I've got my 3D model and I've got my 2D stuff, and I can zoom in on each of these and start to see them accordingly. And then we see Jens, because this is a multi-user collaborative session, we can go in that together. So the cool thing about this is it's almost like back when I was in architecture practicing, we would have to plot. We would have to literally print things out. And I still remember the number of times we had to like get something out by 9 p.m. to make the FedEx pickup. So you'd be plotting, and people would be reviewing the drawings, and you'd find stuff at the last
Mm.
minute, and then you'd have to change it and then replot something. That same thing can be done here. Like because it is a publishing step, as we change things or as we comment or mark up, we can actually update the stuff here too. So for example, let's add a few more things here just to show. So this sheet set that we have is like a collection. Like you can see it in the sheet in the scene browser on the side. And also right here, like this is just a collection of individual sheets. So you can still deal with these things as individual assets, but they're clustered together. And you can see Jens is starting to mark up on there. I can expand the number of things that we are sending out. Let me just say all sheets in the model. And I'm just going to add some of the axons or something too. So I'm basically going to say instead of publishing 7 of them, I'm going to publish like whatever, 15 of them or something, like all the up to the enlarged unit plans. And you saw how fast that was before. I'm just going to save that and republish. So we can be marking up this thing, and then I can either update the current asset that we have or actually make a new one too. So if you wanted to say week by week check sets, okay, what did it look like last week versus this week? You could do that too. But for now, I'm just going to republish this, and you'll see it actually repopulate because it's republishing each of these assets, and they'll show up here. But while we're doing that, you notice that Jens is actually starting to add comments and markups here. And let's just talk about how comments work in this system. So even right now, so comments in Motif, things are like we have infinite canvases that you can add stuff to, but we also have infinite history. So all the changes that we're making are all tracked here as like little micro transactions like Google Docs or any kind of online system.
Mm.
That's kind of like one of the ways you can think about any of these online systems. They're just consistently up to date, and everybody sees everybody's changes when they want to. And comments are no different. So comments actually show up here. I can zoom in on those. I can modify them. I can add replies. So I'll change this now. And then so Jens will see that comment. And then additionally, back on the Revit side, and this is a cool differentiator. I really like this. This is something that people have requested a lot, is those comments also show up back in Revit. So let's see if this works while we're streaming. But the cool thing is I have this comment, and if I click on it, it will actually open up that sheet. So the same sheet that we're looking at here is coming from Revit, and I can actually see that comment, and the request basically from Jens is like the senior design person for me to handle right there. So you don't have to worry about like somebody coming back from a project review meeting with a series of post-it notes. Maybe they write the things down correctly, or they don't. Like it's all tracked in one spot. That's a cool thing. So Jens, what do you want me to do here? You want me to change the leader?
Yeah, and I just wanted the leader to be a little bit different there.
Okay. So yeah, so like in this
To
case,
straighten it out, it looks funky the way it's put there.
yeah.
And yeah, I'm just gonna take a look at
So
some
now I need to go back in the Wayback Machine and figure out how to edit types of keynotes and stuff like that in Revit to do that.
Oh, it's just the placement of it, not the type itself, just the
Oh, okay,
placement.
just like
It looks
where,
so funny the way it's pointing to the sheet.
okay, so if I just move that over.
Yeah.
Okay, so if it's if that was conflicting or just looking wrong, then I can be like, okay, I changed that, and then basically modify that and say, okay, done, that kind of thing. And then I see there's another comment. Let's just go to that. Aha, so now we're actually in one of the new sheets that was published. So you can see here, I've published more sheets into this sheet set. Got like a real plan view, got some real other drawings here, and I can navigate those by simply, all I'm doing here is just mousing over them and pressing the space bar, and that zooms me in. And one of the cool
I think
things
that's
that we
one of
have,
my favorite features, to be honest, the
this is
whole
something that
spacebar
is super
zoom.
cool. It says it actually on the bottom of every view of, hey, you can do
Yeah.
these things, but people forget about it. But I really like that. So it's an easy way to navigate. In addition to that, you can do the same thing here. So if I need to go to the A201 sheet or 210 sheet, I can find that in this list, hopefully. And there's 211. Where's 210? Whatever. Let me just go to this one. So then I can do that here. It's like right in this list right here. Yeah. So that's 210, and then I can navigate in and start to see what else he's commenting on. So this kitchen counter should be cut up against the wall. Okay,
You
cool.
don't have to do that right now, but it's just an example of a thing that we could pick up on here.
Exactly. So if I zoomed in, obviously, so sheets in Revit, as everybody knows, are like a drawing title block, but then they also have like live viewports. So I can zoom in here on this, and this is the live Revit view. This doesn't quite work well on my trackpad. You get the idea here. So it's, oh, we need to modify like this counter like right here to fit. So I could do that too.
Yeah.
So picking up these changes, knowing what to change and picking them up and then republishing is really the essence of what we're trying to do. And the cool thing here is like I can literally share this board or this project with anybody. Like I could send this to a client, I could send this to a consultant. That's the benefit of these types of platforms, is that they're meant for sharing. And even I could copy a link like right now and give it to someone else and have them come into the project. So yeah. So what else can we mark up here? I see you marking up some other
Yeah, I'm just
things.
looking at this railing connection here, whether
Yeah,
that's how that's gonna work. But yeah, I'm just looking around here. And the other thing I guess we also should mention is that currently we have standard marking up functionality. You can change the stroke size and the color. We have normal lines, we have rectangles, and so forth. We are launching more sort of detailed things like revision cloud, cloudy rectangles, and other things in the coming weeks as well. So we will add additional sort of markup functionality, if you will, or review functionality as well in the coming time.
exactly. So like you can see in this drawing set, so number one, so a few things here. So you can draw in different colors and line types right now. You can change all those things in the properties, for example. You can change the line width or the pattern even, like making things dashed. All those things are possible, but we'll add more things there. And just general drawing tools. Like we have started with a very simple interface here. There's whatever, 9 or 10 commands. So we have regular lines and freehand and rectangles and text. So we'll add more there as we get into this workflow some more. But even now, like you can mark up, this'll work in different, it's all browser based, but clearly it'll work on your tablet or your PC, those kinds of things. And all these things are tracked, right? One of the other things that we've actually done recently is change this so that, and you may not be able to see it in the Zoom, that it supports different what are called levels of detail. So the way that a lot of the other systems work, like Miro or anything else, is that they do a bunch of tricks that make it easy to zoom in and out. So when you're zoomed in really or zoomed out really far, we don't have to draw every single small pixel. But when you're zoomed in closely, you can see that the text is crisp and the line work looks good. So we're doing a bunch of work from an software engineering standpoint, so you don't have to as an architect, and things should be fast. That's basically the key
Mhm.
thing. And that's foundational for a lot of these review workflows. So yeah, you should be able to export or publish a bunch of sheets, modify them. You can iterate on them quickly, track the changes, comments, and things like that, and go from there.
And also, again, we don't prescribe a specific way you have to do your review. So we've seen companies where they do a new board per review session. We also have seen examples where you may publish one set of drawings to a board, and then below you, the week after, you say week two, and then you publish a new set of drawings in the same board, just like down below as week two. or week 3 or whatever project. So I guess there's also just a share, sorry, a certain amount of freedom in the tool as to how you want to set it up and do it.
Yeah, and that's definitely something we'd like some feedback from people on is like, how do you like to do stuff? Do you like to see things all next to each other? Do you like to see week over week in one space, or do you want to see them separately and be able to say, I don't want to worry about what I did last month, just show me what I'm doing today. We used to have this concept of we're not your mama. We're not going to tell you exactly how to use a tool, but it needs to be obvious and apparent like how to do it. So yeah, if we wanted to do, say, like next week, like whatever, we're going to do something on like November 5th. So we could do the same thing here where we could publish from Motif, say all these changes got picked up, for example. And I was like, cool, Jens, Mr. Boss, I want you to take a look at some new stuff. I can go in here and basically publish a new asset and say, let's see, whatever, November 5th. So this is like the updated drawings that are there and not overwriting the old ones, just making new ones here and simply publish those. And those will show up in the same board. So they'll literally show up like right here. Just a second. So while we're doing that, I wanted to, yeah, just
And
highlight. Yeah, oh, go ahead. What were you going to say?
maybe one more thing there is also that we've also made a few Dynamo and also Grasshopper notes and scripts that you can use for if you want to do a very custom placement of your sheets as they come from Revit into Motif. We do have ways for you to customize how you're laying them out. So we do allow for some customization there, and we will also in the future work on more inbuilt functionalities around how you can have it lay out your like all your plans in one column and all your elevations in another one, all your sections, etc. So we have seen a few examples of that from customers, and that's definitely also something we're gonna support going forward.
That's a really good point. And this is definitely content for another webcast, but
Yeah,
we mentioned we have plugins for Revit and Rhino. We also have them for the visual programming environments that run on top of Revit and Rhino, so Grasshopper and
right,
Dynamo, respectively. And so that gives you essentially a lot more control over publishing things to Motif and then organizing or modifying the things that are in the project. So you can think about it like a poor man's API or like a way to customize or automate things right now. And a lot of the use case that people are having, they're like, cool, I want to publish my 27 different options. I don't want to press the button 27 times. I just want to have Dynamo do it. Or I've already published 100 sheets, but I want to organize them in a certain way, like by discipline or by stacking them in different ways. Certainly that will be available in the future just natively in the application. But if you wanted to get into that now, talk to us because that's all possible using these tools. So with that, so if I go back to this, so I should see, yeah, this guy showed up now. So I've got two of these things right here. This is my new one, and I'm just going to move this down. So this is my updated sheet set. So I have basically like what it looked like last month, and then any changes that I made, I can see them next to each other and compare them. I could literally say, okay, what did this axon look like last month versus this month? If you wanted to not worry about comparing them, you could simply overwrite the other one, and that would be the equivalent of what's called slip streaming, where it's okay, just I'm
right.
updating that sheet in the record of it. And then, of course, like all of your comments are still there. You can still find them and go back to them as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the fact that these are coming directly from Revit, you don't have to leave that environment. You don't have to worry about PDFs and moving them around. They're just existent, and you can just send a link to somebody. Super cool. And then, of
And
course,
then
the
again,
commenting. Yeah,
as you said, like sometimes people have the 3D model within the same board, sometimes they don't, but there is something nice about being able to, as you sit in review, that you can actually just like move over and look at the model, interact with the model, slice the model, cut a section,
so
and quickly see what it looks like. What's the state of the art of the current model as you sit and do your review, instead of having to sit on multiple screens and have Revit
yeah.
open on one and the other, whatever PDF on the other side, like all of a sudden it's just in the same space. And I think that's
Exactly. And
something
that was kind of like
interesting.
if you think about this as like a designer thought process, if I'm in here and I'm like, hey, you know what? I've got this kind of like nice inverted like roof here. What is the detail for that? Or what's this plan look like at this balcony? Understanding that what how it works from a 3D model standpoint and then also how we're describing it in a drawing, it should be possible to do that. Absolutely. So like in this case here, there's another detail that's already existent that's like right here. And what if you could just simply go to the 3D model and see exactly where that happened in the model to begin with. So for example, if I wanted to start slicing this model, I can do that here too. So if I said, hey, I really want to start figuring out that parapet detail, I can put a little work plane here and turn on the sectioning capabilities that we have, and then literally start to zoom in on that exact same condition. So like this
Mm.
condition right here is what we're talking about. So if I wanted to even draw on that, I can say, hey, let me set this as the active work plane, and literally I'm drawing right there. So like that, you can almost think about that like a 3D detail of
Yeah.
literally this thing that I'm looking at, like right here. That's the same condition. Like here's my window, my nice little soffit condition, and then I could see that here. I can orient on that, get a better shot of that, and then even start sketching on top of that here. So that's what I really like about a tool like this is you can think, whoops, think like an architect again and start to really draw and understand like what's happening in the same scene.
Yeah. And we have some basic measuring tools at the moment, and this is also something we will expand on in the future, that we will have more functionality around like measuring spaces and other things in the coming time. But I think this will give you a pretty good idea of where we're going with this sort of way of reviewing and checking your model up against your sheets.
Yeah, so if I wanted to say, hey, you know what, we really need to add like a drip cap here, or I really need to think about like how the rigid insulation is working, like you can start to really design or think about things in 3 dimensions more, and then also correspond that like back to like how are we thinking about that? How are we drawing that? Are we sloping the structure? Are we sloping the insulation? Like all those kinds of things that can be started to figure out the different layers of construction, understanding how it works in 3 dimensions and 2 dimensions at the same time, and then taking off like measurements, like Jan said. So we do have a measure tool. You can start to say, okay, what is that distance? Oh, that's about, sorry, this is an imperial project, not metric, but that's about 1'8". Okay. Now I
Mm.
get more, now I have more understanding about what I'm looking at here, or what is that overhang like right now? I can start to take off those measurements from there, which is totally useful in this process. So cool. Sounds good. So just checking the time here. So we started at noon Eastern. We're coming in at 12:40. So yeah, and actually, so I am showing some new things that just came out. So we have this nice little section capping. Obviously, like the 3D things like are still super important in this. Let me just show how that works a little bit more. So we have the ability to drop like a section plane into the model, for example. And then on top of that, I can turn on sectioning, which is not new. We've had that for a while, but making this capping these black surfaces here, or if I switch my theme to be the dark mode, then they turn white, which I think is actually pretty visually compelling too. Like that's just something that obviously every first or second year architecture student like does, poche kind of drawings and stuff like that. So you can do that. You can get that for free from these tools. And the good thing about it is you can start to understand how the model works. Like whether it's from Rhino or Revit, you can interrogate it, you can understand how it's constructed pretty easily, and then also communicate that design intent to different people that are not in these other models, which I think is pretty cool. So you could literally be changing the Revit model and talking with the owner or the contractor about some specific detail that's up here and using this as an illustrative like communication device that's always up to date between the 2D and the 3D. Cool. Awesome. Anything else we wanted to cover, Jens, here?
I think that's it for now.
So what are in your mind, so if you obviously you got a lot of friends in the industry, like what are the kind of, if we summed it up, like what are the differences between what we're doing here versus the state of the art that's happening in the industry?
I guess it's like for me the main thing is really that you're able to just push the drawings and the sheets up directly without having to worry too much about the settings and the sort of export settings and all that. And the fact that you can so easily just lay them out almost as if you had a big whiteboard in your office or like a big pinup space. Like the amount of times when I worked at Foster's, we would do like a paper pinups with these magnets on the walls, and like the amount of times where we've had to do that sort of where you have to really make sure it's lined up nicely with almost like with a ruler and everything. Like this almost feels like the same, just in a digital version, but it's like you're pushing up all these drawings, you're getting them all laid out nicely to start with. And
Hmm.
it's just easy to invite people in, have people come in, do their markups, do the review,
Hmm.
comments, and then more importantly, the bidirectionality of pushing the comments back to the authoring tool, especially back on the exact sheet, I think is very valuable and something that really excites me. If I were to put my old architect hat on and not my Motif hat, but I think that is definitely something I find exciting. And
Cool.
then again, like one of the main reasons why a lot of these current tools are being used is because of the capability of doing a shared session. Our tool is a shared session, if you will, from the get-go. It's multiplayer. No matter where you are in Motif, it's always going to be multiplayer. Like, or at least you can make a project on your own if you want to and be completely alone if that's what you wanted to. But you can always invite people in. And I think that's obviously something that really unlocks a lot of possibilities as well, especially for reviews, whether it's 3D or 2D.
Yeah, so love it. I do want to leave a little time for questions and answers. So thanks everybody that's on the call. We're going to go through some of those questions now. And also just highlight there's a few other new features that are dropping today. One of which we already talked about. Like if I make a new board, we can identify, do you want to have it be a top-down kind of 2D view or just a regular 3D view? And just to reinforce like what we just said before, like if I'm doing sheet review, like this is nice for if you have someone that's super used to like dealing with like just panning through PDFs all day, then you can just create something here and it's just already locked in to like that to that state. Sorry, I just lost my VPN for a second. This might actually be a good time to like not do it anymore. The other stuff that we have in the system is there's some questions around the Q&A that I want to get to around AI. There's a cool new AI feature that we've added, machine learning. So we've talked before earlier this summer about the AI rendering capabilities we have, and those are advancing. So number one, there's a really cool way, like if you guys haven't seen this already, from any of the live views that we have in Motif, like these are not just pictures, they're like viewports, right? And they have like their own, we understand the scene, the 3D content. So you
Mm.
can do AI rendering from this, like you're seeing here. You can add a prompt if you want, or you can actually just use some of the presets that we have. And what I like is there's some really cool ones like these watercolor ones that we're seeing here. We just added a new after the rain effect, right? So there's different effects and different modifiers you can do of like the environment that you can play around with. And then really cool on top of that is the ability to make videos as well. So this is a live video that is, I didn't
This
have to
came
go
out
to
today.
Enscape or any other tool. I just took one of our AI renderings or from our viewport and didn't have to define anything else. I just said, here, make a video from this. And you can give it different prompts. You can add people to the scene. You can do all those other kind of fun things directly in Motif and not have to tweak any 5 different ways to do that. Here's
Yeah, and
another
I think the
good
best
example.
I think the best part of this is really that it's for me it's like almost democratizing the accessibility of some of these AI tools, if you will. All of a sudden, your team or your persons in the office, they don't have to be prompt masters to use this. It has the presets. You can prompt if you want to, but more importantly, I think the main thing is that it's right at your fingertips, like right
Mhm.
within the canvas. You can take viewports, existing images, images coming from elsewhere. Could be your holiday pictures from your personal
Yeah,
holiday. You could
exactly.
put them into Motif and posterize them if you wanted to. But I think there's just something very interesting in the aspect of just having this as a right click and then you're good to go. You don't have to remember the password for these different subscriptions and so forth. And I
So,
was
so this,
a
so
budget
this
owner for software and subscriptions at Big, and the amount of different subscriptions we were paying for and having access to was just crazy.
So yeah, so definitely hold this space. Like we're going to do a whole separate session on this next month with
Exactly.
Tatiana, one of our colleagues. But I'm super excited about this. And but relating it back to sheet review, for example, there's different ways that you can use machine learning. So all the capabilities that exist today, like even in a Zoom session that we're dealing with right now, or we use this thing called Notion a lot, there's all these ways that these large language models, these chat-based interfaces are increasingly being adopted into our daily lives. Expect something like that from us soon too. Like how, and that's a question for the audience, like how do you guys think a review session could be empowered or enabled or supercharged by having a little bit more understanding about what's happening in it? So if I went back to a common thing that I remember from practice is where'd it go? Oh yeah, I'm not connected to my VPN anymore. I could go back to that board and say, hey, what did we talk about last week? What, even in an ad hoc session, like if it was me and Jens and some other colleague like Lily, if we sat down just ad hoc over Zoom or together over coffee, what are the things we communicated? What did we talk about? What did we resolve? What came out of that? And how can I track that? So built into Motif is the ability to track those things. And what if there was an easy way to find those details? Number one, find me that parapet detail I was just dealing with. How did
Mm.
it change? Who changed what? Who broke that thing? Like all those things can be assisted by having AI summation and query. So I want to spend a little time going through some of the other questions here. Let's just go through it. And yeah, I'll bounce some of these to you as the moderator. So on that same AI front, let's see. There was one in here. Okay, so when you make a video, will it remain correct to the model as it pans around, or is it just based on the image that you uploaded? So maybe you can answer that one. What does
Currently,
correct
it
mean?
just, sorry, say again?
So the question specifically was when you make a video, will it remain correct to the model, which I presume like is geometrically correct, or will it start to hallucinate? So how does our AI rendering work there?
It's reading the input image as a starting point. I would need to check with Tanya if it's actually reading the back of the model as well as it processes. I don't dare to answer that question in full, if you will.
Yeah, I'll take a
But
more definitive answer. So
yeah, I think
our
keep that answer for next month when we got Tanya on the
yeah,
on the call.
but
Then
so like the
totally.
answer is yeah, it can't see behind your head. But the our philosophy here is that a lot of these AI tools do start to hallucinate, shall we say. And it's bad form if your building design that you're getting paid to design changes by this other tool. So we're not doing that. This thing will not add additional windows or change the geometry for you. It will start from what you give it, right? So if you give it a live Revit or a Motif view, it will give you something that matches that. If you give it some weird abstract sketch, it will try and interpret that and might not do that. So there's definitely room for that to improve. So we can talk through that some more in the next one. So let's see. Yeah, so like one of the other questions is like how will you start to use AI more at the core? Like we talk at the marketing level about having AI at the core, and that is a foundational principle. Like we think that this modern platform AI can't be bolted on. It needs to be integrated directly into the main design application and assist you for things that we like to think about it as like the rote tasks. Like I don't suspicious of things that are taking away the things that I like to do. If it's, oh, I automatically laid out this whole floor plan for you and it's already optimized and everything else, like that's the design problem that architects are 3D puzzle solvers, right? But if it's like, hey, I found these 27 other details that are very much like the one you just made, would you like me to help you auto detail them for you? Or I fixed your plan view so that none of the annotations overlap each other anymore. Those are the things that AI could be good for, is like auto-correct kind of things. But Jens, what do you think? I mean, we already talked about the AI summation, but what's your stance on what are the things that you spent late nights doing that you think an AI tool could help you with?
I think there's a number of things. Obviously, summarizing stuff, but also you mentioned before, like being able to just pick out details from previous projects. That would be a neat feature if you were able to have the AI come up with, you're about to draw this detail. Should I help you either not necessarily finish it, but should I bring up some examples of previous details you've done so you can take some inspiration from those, or maybe even take some components from those there. And I guess there's also just a number of things we're working on that we're just not ready to show just
Mhm.
yet. Like we're cooking on some stuff that we will surely in some of the future webinars we will unveil and show.
So watch
But we're
that space.
definitely to the question in the chat, like we're definitely doing a lot more than just image generation stuff when it comes to AI.
Yeah,
Uh,
and yeah, you'll start to see that. Like a lot of the thing about AI stuff is like machine learning in general is that these foundational models that are trained now are really good at things like text. They don't have a whole lot of domain specificity, and they don't really understand 3D geometry and vectors. Foundational to some of the things that we're working on is expanding it to do that. So you'll hear a little bit more about that later. The other thing in this space is that things are changing quickly. So like I'm curious like what you guys want to do. Like we know what we think we want to do, but we want to collaborate directly with people in the field that are using these tools on a daily basis. What are the challenges you feel like could be solved by AI? And what are the things that maybe you're the low-hanging fruit that people are looking at that might not be that useful. So happy to have that conversation. A couple other topics. I want to wrap this up in another couple minutes, but so a couple other ones here just to
yeah, I was
hear you
just
guys
looking
here.
at the one. There's a question around like why I marked up the leader for you to fix, and then you went back to Revit to fix it. And obviously, you could say, yeah, that is true. Like, why would you need me to comment on that and then have Matt go back and fix it? Why wouldn't I just fix it myself? And I guess maybe to just add to that comment or that question, what we're showing right now with the sheet review process as it is today in Motif, we're obviously relying on content being streamed in from either Rhino or from Revit in the process. Obviously, as Matt mentioned in the very beginning, we are working on a bigger design app and a bigger platform where we will eventually create native drawings as well. So obviously, at some point, you will not necessarily have to go back to a different tool in order to make the change. You could make the change live within the tool itself. But also, I think in many cases, what I was trying to act like before, I would be the principal in the architecture firm that would come in and do a review. And I would not necessarily be the one who knew or know how to fix the leader of that on that drawing. So this was just more to try and mimic an example of a comment that could come, and then the team would have to pick up that comment and fix it. You're right, like in the future, once we get our teeth further into building native drawings and other things directly out of Motif, you would not necessarily have to make that comment and go back and fix it. You would just fix it where it is.
Yeah, so I think that's a really good answer. And obviously, we're leveraging what Revit is good for. So Revit's a modeling tool that actually has really good documentation in it that people are doing today. So that's where the work happens, where you'll see more connections between Motif and Revit over time. So let's see, a bunch of other stuff here we can get into. You cannot see the individual compound layers of a wall or a roof right now in Motif. You can think about it basically like the section box that's in Revit. And we're a little bit constrained by what we get from the Revit API there. So instead of just the black poche. So yeah, the markups, like sending markups back to Revit. So like we have like when this live stream is happening, like you can see that things like comments go back and forth. So primarily the main use case is publishing out from Revit right now, but we can send things back. What we want to do is make sure we don't change the model underneath people and we do these things intentionally. So we've definitely had a lot of requests for seeing markups back on the sheet. I wouldn't want to send markups back just in the general 3D scene because that's a bigger thing. And we certainly don't like there are people that are super interested in essentially doing like tenant fit, like layout, interior layout kind of stuff in Motif as a simpler way to work. That's totally cool. I want to make sure that we don't do that in a way that breaks something in Revit, like starts to move columns around or something like that. So we need your guys' feedback and input on that. We want to have a collaborative session to figure out what we need to do there. It's all
Mm.
technically possible, just like what should we do next? So we have our roadmap, we have a plan for these things, and we'd love to work with you on that. So as we said, expect to see a lot more on this kind of like sheet review and summation kind of thing, and then obviously back on the 3D things as well.
And also, I don't think we'll be able to cover all the questions just now, but if there is any burning questions or anything we didn't cover, just always feel free to reach out to us directly or through LinkedIn or through the website, if you will. I'm more than happy to answer any of the questions afterwards and get back to you. And
Absolutely.
also, if you have any if you have some amazing ideas or something you think we should consider in the process, by all means, also get in touch with us because as Matt said, we are building this stuff right now as we speak, and we have a big focus on reviews and sheet reviews right now. So if there's anything in the process of this that you think we should consider, by all means, keep us posted.
Yeah, so definitely reach out. If you're a new person that's interested, we are happy to talk to you in more detail. Existing customers and people that are using the tool, obviously we're working with you already, so happy to collaborate some more. And like I said, we're doing these monthly releases, actually even more frequently than that. We're a small team that is able to move quickly. So super excited about that. So with that, thanks Jens for joining your first time on this session. Welcome to our Motif little world, and let's see what else we can do.
It's good to be here.
Okay, so thanks a lot, everybody.
Take care, guys.